morning, and welcome to the Friday morning edition of the Gary Sutton Show here on WSBA. And, man, we got a show to close out the week for you this morning. We'll be checking in at 9:25 this morning with Bret Baier, who's the chief political anchor and host of Special Report with Bret Baier on Fox News Channel, about Fox News reporting American Payday, the big squeeze. And we're going to be getting into, will Americans look to get more jobs if somehow Republicans are elected in November? That question's going to be thrown out by Bret this morning, and we'll examine that with him. At 9:35, Dr. G. Terry Madonna joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Tom Wolf's going to have President Obama supporting him here in Pennsylvania. Hats off to him for having the president when others are divorcing from him, but is it a good political move? We'll ask Terry that question this morning, as well as others regarding the politics going on. Dr. Mina Bose, a chair of presidential studies at Hofstra University, will tell us about the CDC is worried that a travel ban over Ebola would hurt African economies. A lot of talk about that yesterday, and we'll see what she has to say. And then at 10:12, Kitty Logan reports live from London on the worldwide concerns that people have about Ebola right now. Jeff Manasso will take a look at 10:35 at airport screenings for Ebola. That's stepping up here. How contagious is this disease? We'll throw in some other things about family dinner time and seniors dating at 10:42, and then we'll give away a couple of tickets at 10:55 to the 40th Annual Oyster Fest. And finally at 11:05, Michael Harrison, editor of Talkers Magazine, talks about news radio and the oversaturated news cycle. Do you think? And what is talk radio's role today? We'll get into some of that this morning. And then at 11:35, what have you seen happen around you that's good and people should hear about it this morning? Just want to get away from some of the bad news for a moment and talk about the good when it's your turn to make the call at 11:35. But we start out the morning here on the Gary Sutton Show with Clark Hodges, financial strategist at Hodges Capital, live from Dallas, Texas this morning, which everyone's keeping their eye on. And good morning, Clark. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's Friday. How are you?
Every day's Friday for me. I'm telling you. How disgusting is that? I mean, don't you hate people that say that kind of stuff?
No, I don't. I mean, the positive attitude always wins out.
And I know you're a guy that's after that, too. And your dad was as well. And I look at his book and all the motivational stuff in his book called Horse Sense and Street Smarts. I'm always impressed by the positiveness of that book.
Yeah, he would collect those quotes. And I have two siblings, and every once in a while, he'd say, "Hey, y'all come in here. I want to read you something." Of course, we moaned and groaned. And he would read something in a paper, magazine, what have you, but he would tear it out and save it. And his criteria was something that he felt was true, not necessarily funny, controversial. It was just something that he felt, hey, that's a true statement. Or there's some truisms in it. He'd save it. He did that for 40 years, and he finally put them in a book.
You know what's interesting about the book, and I'm not plugging the book here by any means, but you had sent me a copy of it, which I really appreciated. And what's interesting about the book is you go through there and you see, we always talk about all these quotes, famous quotes, but the famous quotes in this book come anywhere from sports figures to famous people to maybe the person he knew across the street who said something profound. And that was one of the real beauties of it. When I look through it every now and then, I pull out some quotes, but sometimes I have it sitting here right in front of me, and I look through it, and I just look through to see some common sense wisdom. And I love that kind of stuff.
There's actually a quote in there from Clark Hodges.
I haven't found that one yet. I will keep on looking. Okay, what section are you in on that?
Don't get overly excited. I remember when we were probably juniors in college, and he asked me about a friend of mine who has some issues with alcohol, and I said, "Hey, Dad, everybody's got something they got to deal with," and something to that effect. And he put that in there. He thought that was a wise thing.
Well, there you go. So, hey, what's the mood down in Dallas right now? I know Ebola is the talk just about everywhere around the country, so I can't imagine it's not the talk there. Maybe even more acute. But what are the thoughts this morning?
Yeah, it's definitely the talk. It's definitely the subject matter. I really feel like it's been mishandled, and I feel like the city of Dallas is, in my opinion, from a political standpoint, the city of Dallas is dysfunctional. And the fact that they would let people get on airplanes or even, tell them that it was okay to get on airplanes, people that worked on specimens of the patients, they'd go on a cruise ship. I just think it's been mishandled from day one. And their attitude from day one has been, hey, no big deal, don't worry. Don't get overly worried about all this stuff. But then every day something comes out and it seems more dangerous and more scary. So it is definitely a worrisome issue down here.
You know what's interesting about all this is we were talking about this yesterday on the show, and just as people talk and people think out here on Main Street where I live and where you live, and if you have some kind of disease. I can remember the old days when someone had pink eye. You'd never send them to school because it was contagious. All right, and that was just common sense. I mean, parents would say, "I'm not going to send you to school because it's contagious," and of course, the kid would be quietly clapping their hands. I don't have to go to school today. But the point being, there's a certain amount of common sense, and it looks to me like for some reason anymore in this new day and age that we. And I said this yesterday. I wondered what your thoughts were on it today. And we wanted to specifically ask you. Why do we underestimate the threats that face our country instead of overestimating and going to the aggressive approach right away? I mean, I don't think we want to go, just half-cocked off on this whole thing. But by the same token, it seems to me that we ought to be saying, what's the worst-case scenario right away and making sure that somehow we attack it with that attitude. I remember a coach one time saying, if you eliminate all the things that make you lose, you win. And in this situation, it seems like that might apply, that you try to eliminate all the things to the extent that you can that make you lose, and you might win by just a natural byproduct.
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that people are selfish, and they don't look at the greater good, and the fact that somebody may have worked on a specimen or been in the room with the Ebola patient that passed away, then they think, well, I have this vacation plan. I'm going to go on anyway.
Right.
And they're putting themselves first. They're not using common sense. And they don't recognize that one decision could affect thousands of people potentially. And I think it's a lot of that. It's a self-centered society. In the last 2 years, the one word that everybody talks about, that everybody does, that even the president's doing, is selfie. They're taking a selfie of themselves. Yeah. All that does is create in these young people, all it does is create in these young people a sense that the only thing that matters in life is me. And I'm the star of my own movie, and I need to get it out there and let everybody see it. When actually you're going to have a much happier life if you put other people first and do things for the greater good and benefit mankind rather than what you consider to be benefiting you. And I think that's one major problem with kids growing up today and people that have been raised with these iPhones in their hands is that they think the whole world revolves around them and they're selfish.
Yeah, I think, what has made this country great, and I still think we are a great country, and I think there's a lot of good here. But what's made the country great, it seems to me, is the idea that people did work not only for themselves now, but how many times did you hear from your dad, and I heard from my dad, I want you to have it better than I had it, which in a way what was really great. But another way, if you think about it, did we become a lazier society when they said that because they set it up so we kind of had success coming out of the gate, and then we could choose whether we really wanted to work hard or not? I've often wondered about that. What do you think?
I think there's something to that. I mean, but I think there's also something to the fact that, we were raised, a lot of kids are raised with, okay, if you just show up, you get a trophy. If you just, and there's the competition aspect. I've been reading Pete Carroll's book, the head coach of
Seattle.
And his whole basic philosophy in life is competition, man. Compete at everything. When you're practicing, compete. When you're, doing your whatever, it's competition brings out the best in everybody. And I love that philosophy because I can apply that to what I do. I can compete today against the guys in my office or the peers in my industry to be the best marketing person for the funds that we run, whatever you do. And if you have that attitude, you're going to be better because you're going to try to be your best every single day. And I think that's part of it.
We're talking with Clark Hodges, financial strategist at Hodges Capital, although we're not really talking financial stuff right now. This really feeds into it well because you look at the idea of competition and whether people like it or not coming out of the gate, we are competing right from the very beginning. Now, can you overdo it as a parent with kids and you think right away of sports and so on? Sure you can. But the idea that somehow we go to the total other pole and say, well, everybody's going to get a trophy and everybody's going to get rewarded, it's a false sense of kind of entitlement in a way. I mean, certainly there are situations where everybody gets something, where, I understand that. But in situations that are competitive, do you then give the kids a false sense of security? Then you send them out in public later on, and somehow that idea that initially was planted there is still around.
Right. I think, the best example I can give is in sports. I know a lot of kids that played sports when they're young, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, the YMCA type thing. And then they just assume they're going to walk out in the high school field and be there. And the fact is, that's when the competition becomes cutthroat, and you end up getting cut from the team or don't make the A team or what have you. And their whole attitude up until that point was, I thought I just had to show up. I would get on the field, and that's just really not life. And I don't think there's many successful people in life who walk around all day long thinking the only one important is me. And, hey, let's take some selfies while we're at it and put it up on our Facebook so people can see how great my life is. That's not how you become a success. And you're not that way, and my father's not that way. And if you think that's the ticket to success, you're actually backwards, because it's probably the opposite.
Well, yeah, in my business, you're as good as you were on today's show. I mean, there's no contract for tomorrow, so, and you kind of like that pressure out there. But, bringing it all back to Ebola again, and the point that you made about people are kind of putting themselves ahead of everybody else. I mean, with this disease around, and you even look at a disease like the flu, for example. If you have the flu, which has cost far more lives in this country last year than Ebola is costing right now, and you say, well, gee, that's not an exotic thing. But, if you don't treat that correctly, if you don't go out and get antibiotics, if you don't stay home, if you stay away from, going out and infecting other people, that's dangerous stuff too. So, I mean, again, it goes back to what is for the greater good here and what is good for myself, and how do I find that balance?
Right. You're something like the flu. If you have the flu and decide to go to work, you're putting other people at risk. If you go on an airplane, you're putting other people at risk. And not that it'll kill them, but it definitely could, in a work situation, create a situation where there's productivity loss, which is money, which is earnings, which is, livelihood. So, yeah, it's a selfish mentality.
It's one of the other things I look at right now, too, is the idea that we just need to start to see real people when we're making policies out there. I'm not just talking about the president or the Congress, anybody. We got to really look at people instead of seeing them as kind of like chess pieces to be moved around on the board that have no faces, and death means nothing and disaster means nothing. We have to start giving it a personal touch, I think. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I definitely think it's a sensible argument, but it's one of those things that people have to come to that realization on their own.
Yeah. Hey, Clark, I know we didn't get to a lot this morning on financial, but I think we might have gotten to something more important, and I really appreciate you getting your thoughts in here this morning. It meant a lot.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Have a good weekend.
Take care and be safe, okay? Always great having you. We'll have you next Friday at 9:05. Clark Hodges, financial strategist with Hodges Capital. Have a great weekend, Clark.